Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jay Cohn.
And I'm Jeanelle Slade. Montana's grueling wildfire season is finally smoldering to an end. Statewide
flames charred more than 1 million acres this summer, forever changing the Montana landscape.
As several fires still burn in Montana, the weather during the last week has helped dampen the second worst fire season since 1994.
According to the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation, firefighters have gone from fire suppression to rehabilitation and mop-up. Take a look. Since 1994, the worst year was 2012, with nearly 1.5 million acres burned from approximately 3,400 wildfires. This year, 1.4 million acres burned, the result of 2,800 fires.
In 2006, about 4,200 fires burned, about 1.2 million acres in northwestern Montana. Firefighters are still working the fire lines on 8 blazes.
The change in the weather doesn't put out the fires completely. In certain areas, you may be able to still see smoke from the fires, but the fire activity at this point right now, due to the precipitation and cooler temperatures, has greatly diminished the fire behavior.
And Crystal Beckman says of the last 10 years, about 60% of wildfires were human-caused, 40% caused by lightning.
This fire season scared us, choked us, inconvenienced, and frustrated most of us. We lost more than 1 million acres, as we said, and lost part of our summer as well to fire.
But let us not forget what was really lost. 2 brave men who paid the ultimate price to keep us safe. MTN's Jill Valley reports.
One, so young, working on just the second wildfire of his career. The other, an elite, experienced hotshot with a family legacy of firefighting. But both would die in Montana, killed by falling trees while fighting fire. 19-year-old Trenton Johnson recently graduated from Hellgate High School in Missoula. He was a member of the state champion lacrosse team. He enrolled at Montana State University, working towards a degree in engineering. You had to be on your toes to keep up with this kid.
He had an awesome sense of humor. Witty, like he was 3 steps ahead of the conversation, and he would come up with just snappy, witty statements.
Trenton followed in his big sister's footsteps to become a summer wildland firefighter, and he was excited when he got that first call to fight a fire in Utah.
He likes to work hard, he likes to be outdoors, so it was a really good fit for him, and he loved it. He was on the Bryan Head fire for 2 weeks in Utah, and he called me every single day and let me know how he was doing, like what he was doing. He absolutely loved working hard.
Then he was assigned to a fire burning near Seeley Lake, a small lightning-started fire that would eventually become part of the Rice Ridge Fire. But on July 19th, suddenly, a tree fell and hit him. He died at the hospital.
Some of the wording I heard was fast as a lightning bolt. And they just heard a crack, and that was it. 3 of them were able to get out of the way, and Trenton did not.
2 weeks later, it happened again. 29-year-old Brent Witham of California died August 2nd in the early days of the Lolo Peak fire. A tree fell and hit him while working on a fire line in the McLean Creek area. Brent is a member of the Vista Grande Hotshots stationed in San Bernardino, California. He left Montana a hero. He returned home as one to hundreds of fellow firefighters who paid their respects.
It's very emotional to see a fallen fire brother come out of the plane, and I feel pain as if it was my own brother.
Montana Governor Steve Bullock ordered flags in Montana flown half-staff in honor of Trenton and Brent and all other wildland firefighters lost in the line of duty. Montana's congressional leaders praised their bravery, saying Trenton and Brent's sacrifice will not be forgotten. Neither will this fire season. It was a tough one.
Why did this happen again? Especially so local and so close to all of us. yeah, it's been a rough summer for firefighters all around.
We just ask that you keep the family and in your prayers, and the fellow workers, and all the firefighters that are out there right now on the line.
We'd like to take a moment now to thank all of you who have generously donated to the Montana Wildfire Relief Fund.
Yeah, whether you've shared posts or opened up your wallets to help Montana communities, your actions are definitely making a difference. And we're pleased to report that 614 donations have now been made to the Montana Wildfire Relief Fund. That brings the total up to $105,000.
Add to that $50,000 matching donations, one from our parent company and the other from Mountain Sky Guest Ranch. That will push the total raised to more than $200,000. Your contribution is helping communities across our state.
And we want to invite you to join Q2 Saturday for a special report on Montana's wildfire season 2017. We'll take a closer look at the fire headlines across the state and tell you how you can help communities that have been impacted by the devastating fires. The Montana Wildfire Relief Special airs Saturday. You see the time there at 6 p.m. It follows our 5:30 newscast here on KTVQ.
Ed McIntosh in for Bob McGuire this week. From one extreme to the other, we're looking at a very cold, wet weekend.
Yeah, we're really going to get started that way for sure. Already, winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories into effect for areas to the west of Billings. Areas like Red Lodge and Cook City could be waking up to 2 to 8 inches of snow first thing tomorrow. And the higher peaks could be picking up 10 to 20 inches of new snow. And the Crazies, the Beartooths, the Absarokas, the Bighorns could pick up a little as well. As far as rain showers go, we're going to favor areas from Billings to the west in particular as we start getting into the evening and overnight hours of tonight, and that will bring as much as a ½ inch to perhaps 1.5 inches of moisture across areas into the western portion of our viewing area. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes.
All right, thanks so much, Ed.
Even all the rain that Ed talked about, it's not going to spoil the fun for many of the events scheduled around the Magic City this weekend. However, there are a few changes to let you know about.
Organizers of Ales for Trails announced the fundraising event will move indoors this weekend, so head on over to the Radisson Hotel to raise money for local bike trails.
And the Horse Nation's Indian Relay, which runs throughout the weekend down at the Metro Park grandstands, it will start as planned, rain or shine. And then, of course, bundle up for Saturday Live over at Pioneer Park Saturday. School District 2's largest fundraiser will go ahead as planned, as will the Parade of Homes this weekend.
In other news tonight, a longtime Yellowstone County judge and auditor announced their resignations, but they each depart with a different sentiment. Judge Pedro Hernandez will leave the Yellowstone County Justice Court after 47 years on the bench. Hernandez served in the U.S. Air Force during the Vietnam War and went on to work for the Billings Police Department before he was appointed judge. In his resignation letter, he calls it a humbling experience to serve the people of this community and says his work is a passion, not a job. His wife, Debbie Hernandez, also submitted her letter of resignation Wednesday. She is the county's current auditor, but has served the people of Yellowstone County in various positions for the past 37 years. Hernandez called her work rewarding, but said the department suffers from a lack of manpower. In her letter, Hernandez criticized the lack of support for her department and said she leaves the position dissatisfied. Both resignations are effective November 30th.
What is it going to take to bring Montana into compliance with the federal Real ID program? Well, that was the focus at the state capitol today in Helena as the legislature's interim committee on law and justice convened. Now, during this year's legislative session, lawmakers passed a bill that gives residents the choice to get a driver's license that meets the Real ID requirements. The State Motor Vehicle Division says it plans to implement that program by the start of 2019. Now, Montana did receive a waiver from the Real ID requirements in effect through October 10th of this year. State leaders have asked for yet another extension. Once the Real ID requirements go into effect, the federal government will not accept the current Montana driver's licenses as identification at airports or federal facilities. People who don't get a Real ID compliant license will have to use a passport or another form of identification.
Up next on your Q2 5:30 News, a family reeling from the effects of suicide hits the trail to bring hope and healing.
And later in sports, Scott checks in with Laurel's football guys whose undefeated record surprises even them.
You're watching MTN News with Jay Cohn and Jeanelle Slade. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green.